Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about the truth. It's actually a pretty simple concept. Conformity with fact or reality. The truth. The Washington has trouble grasping that whole idea. They'll tell you that we're really not even news, that you should read the Huffington Post or whatever. Instead, over there, they're spilling out garbage like saying the $1 trillion health care plan is reducing costs. Don't take my word for it. I don't ever want you to take my word for it. I want you to look at the facts. I need you to decide who's telling the truth. Your children need you to decide that. We told you many times the $1 trillion plan will not save money, and the $1 trillion plan is not a $1 trillion plan. I can't believe that we have to actually argue that spending $1 trillion, that it's not a cost reduction, but I digress. Last week, the administration celebrated the Medicare trustees' report as evidence that Obamacare saved Medicare, and the media did their job, and they just cheerfully reported the news. But they all kind of forgot to mention one little dissenting opinion actually included in the report from the oh-so-biased chief of Medicare actuary. He's Richard Foster. He's held that post now for 15 years. The truth. As the economic site E21 points out, if you take the projected Medicare expenses for 2080 and compare to what Foster says expenses will really look like, it's 68% higher. CMS summed up their estimates like this. The final projections showing in this report for Medicare do not represent a reasonable expectation for actual program operations in either the short range or the long range. Don't take my word for it. I encourage you to review the illustrative alternative projections that are based on more sustainable assumptions for physician and other Medicare price updates. There you go. This is from the same report touted by the administration. What happens? The administration just chairs it up and the press ignores it. This is unprecedented. Usually actuaries just sign off on these estimates. Foster denounced them. But again, don't take it from me. Don't wait for the media to report on Foster's comments either. Read the full report yourself at glennbeck.com and decide for yourself who is telling the truth. Hello, America. I'm glad you're here. I have to tell you that I just read an article before I came into the studio about how Americans are not visiting American news sites as much anymore. They're starting to go overseas to try to get their news overseas because they trust it more. What is happening to us? What is happening to our country? We know instinctively in our gut. Have you read this? This is Barack Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. It's the #1 New York Times bestseller. It was out for a long time. It will really, truly change your perspective on things. Let me ask you this. What were the dreams of your father? Do you know? What was he passionate about? What did he want for you? Maybe he wanted you to go to college because maybe he didn't even graduate from high school. He definitely wanted something better for you than he had. Maybe he always wanted to start his own business and be his own boss, but couldn't. Maybe he just wanted to take your mom to Europe or South America on a dream vacation. I remember my dad all he wanted to do was retire and go golfing. He didn't make it because he worked so hard by the time he could retire. His back was so bad he couldn't walk around the course. But maybe your father, his dream was to retire, enjoy his grandchildren, and go fishing with them. I don't know what the dreams of your father were, but at least some of those dreams that I just mentioned you could probably relate to even if they weren't your dad's dreams. As an American, chances are your father didn't dream of leaving his family and 2-year-old toddler behind to continue his education at an Ivy League school so that he could take that American government-paid education back to his home country, along with a woman he picked up in Boston who had become his third wife, to encourage his nation to drop the newfangled socialism being promoted in favor of old-style Soviet Marxism. Do you know anybody who had a dad who that was their dream? I don't know him, but the only one whose dad had that dream that I know is Barack Obama. Those were the dreams of Barack Obama's father. Now, they were a little more complicated than that, but essentially that's what Barack Obama Sr. did. He fought against African socialism advocated by pro-Western Third Way leader, this guy, and the president of Kenya. This is Kenyatta. You have Kenyatta? There he is. And he fought against those guys in favor of the communist allied leader. He wrote an article in 1965. It's called Problems Facing Our Socialism, written by Obama Sr. This has a point. It's not just a history lesson. This actually applies to today and maybe can help you figure out what's really going on in the world and maybe help wake your neighbors up. In this report, this mocks the government's economic policy of African socialism while focusing on what needs to be done in Kenya. He says, what is more important is to find means by which we can redistribute our economic gains to the benefit of all and at the same time be able to channel some of these gains to future production. It's the government's obligation. He goes on, we also need to eliminate power structures that have been built through excessive accumulation so that not only a few individuals shall control a vast magnitude of the resources, as is the case now. How can we afford to ignore the pockets of this economy which are underdeveloped without some positive statement about their development? In Kenya, the colonial government only developed the so-called white areas. Anti-colonialism, in this case it was anti-English and Marxist. Not even Marxist, it was full-fledged Soviet. That is Barack Obama Sr. Those were the dreams from his father. Now, his father went back to Kenya. He became the senior economist with the Kenya government until his disagreements with the President Kenyatta, led to his firing and apparent alcoholism. Now, back in Hawaii, according to President Obama's first book, Dreams from My Father, his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, continued to direct young Barack Obama's attention and focus on the character and ideology of his communist and atheist biological father, rather than to the man whom Durham was remarried, Lolo Sureto. This guy, he's from Indonesia. So now here's young Barack Obama caught between three races, white, Asian, black, and three worlds, America, Indonesia, and far-off Kenya with his father. That can be a really, really good thing, but it can also be a really, really bad thing. Barack Obama was left with the faint memories and constant stories of the man who left him behind, and later, the stories of his father's father. This is where it gets interesting, and we've talked about this once before. His father's father, Barack Obama's grandfather, Hussein Obama. He's a man who became a cook for the British colonial troops in Kenya. The British in Kenya. He converted to Islam. But what were the dreams of Barack Obama's grandfather? Well, he became involved in the independence movement in Kenya. And when that was discovered by colonial forces, British forces in 1949, Barack Obama's grandfather was taken into custody and jailed for 6 months by the British. Now, according to Obama's grandmother, one of Hussein's wives, the British brutally tortured him while in custody, to the point where he suffered permanent physical disabilities. You put those pieces in the puzzle, and you put them together, it might shed some light on the way that Barack Obama Jr. deals with the British today. Remember, if you go back to May, when the White House said this. They wanted to keep the boot on the throat of BP. Or when we needed NATO's help in sending more troops to support our war in Afghanistan, guess who was there to lend a hand? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't Germany. It wasn't France. Shouldn't come as a surprise. The British were reportedly warned when Obama was elected that while they will, quote, remain special to us, quoting, Britain may have to make room for a few more special countries. The colonial